Okay, awesome.
All right, so here we are on the second with us. Big go round.
Yes.
How's it feel?
Wild and joyous. It does. It does feel joyous. And this time, you saw it really in its genesis stages. And this go round, more collaborators have joined, and there's been lots of change as far as topography of the piece and the etymology of movement inside of this piece, and a lot more voices as far as like process goes, and like how are we shaping this together with the musicians, with director now, added director, Miss Kathy, and lighting designer and projection artist, Lisa Suzanne, who has just been exceptional. And of course, Mr. Tommy DeFrance, who has gifted us his space here at Slippage. So there has been a profound amount of change within these 6 months. It's been 6 months, yeah. 6 months that we were last together here at Slippage Lab doing the first workshop.
So I don't really look at what I'm doing right now as a traditional kind of directing role. I'm just another collaborator that he's brought in. I'm the person who, in this state of the development of the piece, because I think it's got more growth to make. I think he's got many more steps he's going to take with it in terms of as he develops it, as it goes along, continuing to grow it and stretch it out and let it find its shape. So I'm basically acting as his eyes in the audience. He's a pretty amazing man, and he probably could see himself on the stage. But I'm just sitting back and sort of helping to be his outside view right now. So to me, it's much more of a collaboration than it is sort of a traditional director-performer kind of scenario. Watching him as an artist over 3 years, his growth over 3 years, and getting to know him and being able to work with him, has given me a little bit of an insight into just sort of artistically how he creates and he embodies characters and movement. So I got to see this in a couple of iterations. Like I got to see it in a couple of rehearsals when he was developing it for one of his classes. He come up as the idea sort of nurtured and nested in his mind, and he would talk to me a little bit along the way about what he was reading and what material and what essays he was reading, and we both love James Baldwin. I've known Baldwin for so long. I remember reading Go Tell It on the Mountain when I was maybe 13 or 14 years old, and I teach him in my one of my theater classes. I teach Go Tell It on the Mountain, and of course the more you see him and read him, the more relevant you see how he is today. I think in this particular moment in time, for me, it has been the resonance of the observations and the insights that he's had about being Black in America, how true they still are, and while we've come really far, and we know that change has been made, that there's so much further to go, and that wisdom is just wisdom. Even watching his videotapes and looking at film clips of him and reading his work, you just see that he's an old soul. I mean, I feel like his roots are just directly connected to Africa and into the ancient voices. And that wisdom was present when he was writing and speaking in the 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s, and it's still relevant today. So to me, it's a spiritual experience, and I find working with Tristan because to me, he looks like Baldwin. To me, he carries that same spirit of, Tristan just embraces life and has such a vitality in him and such a driving, clarity about his spiritual connection. I almost think he's our griot, right? He's our connection between earth and heaven and earth. So he embraces a big part of that, and I think the marrying of those two, or the integration of those two, the exploration of those two, is just again another sort of spiritual vision into the future. It's a transportive experience. That's been my experience with it so far.
Was very,
direct, because it was the only means they had of expressing their pain and their despair. But years later, the moral authority which was present in the Negro Northern community when I was growing up vanished. And people talk about progress. And I look at Harlem, which I really know. I know it like I know my hand. And it is much worse there today than it was when I was growing up. 709 Hart Avenue. The first home my mama purchased. She labored to ensure that her children spent their lives outside of the projects, where she grew up with 9 other siblings until the age of 11, before moving into an all-black neighborhood in the heart of the city of Nashville.
Tristan sort of describes the experience, or has curated the experience, as to be a spiritual commune with James Baldwin. So it invites conversation. And he is just so ready for it that, my willingness to have that talk with him continuously for the last 6 months has been just very easy. And I think both of us have been doing a lot of learning and listening. It was really easy to see its depth. Artists in general are always imagining and living in a parallel universe that, you create, right? Where anything is possible. And so seeing the piece in December, I was able to go to that place, and Baldwin and Tristan took me there. And I imagined all of these elaborate things. Of course, that involved projection and lighting. Yeah, it was really easy to see the ways in which I could add to the piece with those elements, but also to make sure that they supported the work and the writing and the research. The piece closely follows The Fire Next Time and Native Son. So I just had to dive in head first, and spent 6 months basically on a Baldwin trip. And I don't know that I'm ever gonna really get off this roller coaster, because once you dive into such a dynamic person like him, it's hard to not get hooked and continuously want to find out more.
Who are we? Home.
For you, what have been the biggest changes from it just speaking almost completely let's see the best way to phrase this. What were some of the largest challenges when it came to just making this bigger, making this larger than what it was before, making it truer and still keeping it true, because that's a difficult process sometimes. What was that like this go around?
Maintaining the rigor of research, because oftentimes, when what we had in December can feel like the thing itself, but you have to continue to ask yourself questions, continue to research, and sit with, in my case, Baldwin, continuously, every single day. Maintaining the rigor of the integrity of what this thing is and where we see it going actually has been the challenge. Of making sure that we are doing it with intellectual demand, artistic demand, and making sure that we're keeping the pulse of this piece pulsating. And so that has been the challenge of it, of this piece, and also pragmatically looking at his words on pages and seeing how that then translate into our bodies has been has been something that we've been sort of exploring, and I've been exploring since the last time that we staged it in December.
There was this term that I explored choreographically that had popped up in a work of Toni Morrison's. And Toni Morrison and Baldwin were colleagues and friends. And this term, false intimacy, popped up in her Source of Self-Regard, which is recently published, a series of essays that she's written. And I was so struck by this term, false intimacy. And so I then began to write that on page. And then choreographically, I drew an arrow from the term false intimacy to the term, how do we create an authentic intimacy? And what is my relationship to that? And intrinsically, that is already there because I've always referred to Baldwin as my grandfather, and he acts as your grandfather. And so I don't, this is not some sort of exclusive relationship that I have with Baldwin, even though my relationship to Baldwin is singular to yours. But I do feel as though when I do say the term, when I do say that Baldwin is acts as my muse, as my grandfather, I am also saying that he is acting as your grandfather.
What is relevant about this